In 2024, the Pumpkin Spice Latte arrived at Starbucks earlier than it ever has before. The super sweet, gourd-based beverage rakes in hundreds of millions of dollars for the chain every single year and marks the seasonal shift from brat girl summer to the colored leaves and flannel shirts of fall. So buckle the f up because PSL season is here, baby. For millions of people around the world today, the arrival of fall is not when the leaves turn to a different color or when it's cold enough to bring out that cozy sweater, but when the pumpkin spice lattes are available at Starbucks. Now you might be thinking, geez, isn't this just another byproduct of our hyper-consumer focused world? Surely this is just another story about how people are buying stuff compulsively to try and fill the void of loneliness and exhaustion that they feel in their hearts instead of finding purpose and connection with others outside in the real world. Well, yeah. That too. But the reasons why we are obsessed with this pumpkin flavored drink more than any other drink of the year is genuinely fascinating. A bit depressing, sure, but also fascinating. So unless you are a part of the Flat Earth subreddit, you know that we are humans living on a planet that orbits around a sun that influences the seasons that we experience here on Earth. This seasonal shift from warm to cold and vice versa is literally baked into our evolution as a species, and so it has some pretty deep wiring into our brains and how we function. Historically, colder weather that arrives in fall would be a sign that winter was coming and that you should probably get your crops in and preserved for the wintertime and whatnot. At this time of the year, you would be eating different things than you did in the summer. Fresh fruits and veggies aren't as abundant and root vegetables and squashes are popping off. This shift in diet and lifestyle is a huge cultural connection to us and the world around us and our communities. But unless you have a farm or you live in the woods or something, you probably don't have the same survival instincts as our ancestors did. More than ever, we are a species that spends all of our time inside looking at tiny little rectangles of light emitting from our devices. Our connection to the natural world and its cycles are completely cut off, and what is left is this sort of vaguely anxious feeling that we need to prepare and settle down in anticipation of winter, but without the full understanding or knowledge of how to do that. And that cyclical feeling is still there in our bodies, but we don't have nature to take our natural cues from. And so consumerism fills the gap. So the Pumpkin Spice Latte was not some fun accident created by some inspired hippie with an espresso machine, okay? It was a deliberately created product in the Starbucks Liquid Lab Research Center in Seattle by a guy named Peter Duke. And this wasn't even their first seasonal beverage. They had already had success with the peppermint mocha and the eggnog latte, which were Starbucks' first seasonal drinks ever. And now listen, just for a second, if you can forget for a moment that this is a story about a food laboratory trying to synthetically recreate the human brain's feeling of fall into a drink in order to make millions of dollars, it is genuinely super fascinating how they did this. If you've ever drank a PSL, you might realize that it doesn't really taste that much like pumpkin, maybe a bit more like pumpkin pie, but that's probably because up until 2015, there wasn't actually any pumpkin in these beverages. To clarify, the pumpkin that you're tasting in these drinks is actually called pumpkin sauce, and it is a blend of sugar, condensed milk, natural and artificial pumpkin flavors, salts, and preservatives. Today, there is actually pumpkin puree in these drinks after a bunch of people got kind of mad about it, but it is carefully balanced with a bunch of other non-gourd ingredients. The other key flavors in a PSL are cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove, which kind of makes sense as they are typically found in other baking and cooking in fall and winter meals. This is a classic fall flavor that has been around for hundreds of years and is a legit spice pack that was first packaged and sold back in 1934 by McClure and Company. It also helps that a standard PSL has 50 grams of sugar in each drink, which is a lot more than a standard can of Coke. But honestly, I genuinely think that what Starbucks has done is incredible. They have invented this sweet, creamy, aromatic beverage experience that is now a psychological trigger for millions of people that fall has arrived.
I'll have a Trenta no foam 5-shot half-cap no foam pumpkin spice latte with no foam at 210 degrees.
So the PSL was released in 2003 to 100 stores in Vancouver and Washington, D.C. It was such a success that just a year later, they released it nationally, finally coining the PSL shorthand. The Pumpkin Spice Latte also had some good luck with its release. Twitter was invented in 2006, and this became one of the go-to places where fans could immediately share their love for the drink outside of their friends list, because Facebook arrived in 2004, but it was only for your friends. In some ways, this was one of the first really viral online food trends, and it became a complete pop culture phenomenon. The craze grew so much that in 2012, they couldn't keep up with demand and they went through a pumpkin sauce shortage. Such a thing would probably send our modern economy into a tailspin. Thankfully, it appears that Starbucks has ironed out a lot of these details, because you'll not only be able to get a PSL if you decide to go today, but you'll have more days than ever to try and get one. And if stories about our crazy consumer world are of interest to you, please consider supporting this channel over on our Patreon page. There you will get early access to every single video that we put out on this channel. You'll get exclusive content that only Patreon members see, like our podcast and episodes that we never released here on YouTube. We are always trying to diversify our income to be able to provide this content free for you, but the sad reality is that when you criticize brands and companies, not a lot of brands and companies want to sponsor your stuff. Honestly, every Patreon member does make a big difference for a little company like ours. So if you want to check that out, there is a link down in the description below. So when we first started planning this video, I was like, let's release a Pumpkin Spice Latte video for its release, like in September sometime. How stupid were we, eh? This year, the PSL has had its earliest release date ever on August 22nd. But that's not when fall starts, is it? Starbucks are taking on seasonality and nostalgia marketing to manipulate the start of seasons as a way to extend the life of this limited time item. And of course, this isn't a new phenomenon. They've been doing this for quite a while now. But it's fascinating. The first ever year that Starbucks released the PSL, they did it on October 10th. And it's been creeping earlier and earlier every single year. Last year, on the PSL's 20th birthday, the drink launched on August 24th. In 2022, they released it on August 30th. And if you look back through the list of dates when the drink is being sold, you can see that it's pretty clear what they're doing. Like, at this rate, we are literally sipping pumpkin flavored drinks on the beach in our short shorts, which just feels kind of wrong, doesn't it? By the way, for context, fall starts officially on September 22nd. They're like an entire month early at this point. And all right, look, I want to be clear right now that if you enjoy yourself a sweet little treat that happens to be fall themed, even though it's not even remotely fall yet, that's okay. You know, I'm not here to bash people who like the pumpkin spice latte. I do think that we could all maybe be a little bit more aware of how we're being pushed into buying certain things at certain times. I mean, that's why we started this channel, right? But I just want to continue to highlight how there is this entire psychology that Starbucks has manipulated to make this drink as popular as it has. See, on top of the evolutionary desire to be cozy and connected to the flavors of fall, there is a few more psychological tools working for the pumpkin spice craze. I think the PSL movement benefits from a little bit of what is known as nostalgia bait. This is when a brand or company brings up those positive memories or moments from history that many of us grew up with to try and sell us something from those simpler times. We have a whole video coming out about this phenomenon, so I'm not gonna ruin for you right now, but basically, the world is a stressful and scary place, and the past is a safe spot in our brains. From this perspective, the pumpkin spice latte doesn't just signal the beginning of fall, but it also brings with it a sensation that the year is ending, that we can slow down and maybe take a break, you know? There is a reason why the Christian Girl Autumn meme became so popular, or why the show Gilmore Girls gets so many rewatches this time of the year. There's a certain escapism that comes with this season, and Starbucks is so good at creating this atmosphere. When you go into a Starbucks during their PSL season, the shift is everywhere. The store smells like pumpkin and cinnamon. The lights are dim and pleasant. The music is jazzy and comforting. The decorations in each store are reminiscent of leaves falling off of trees and the signature colors that make autumn and fall feel the way it does, even though it is still August. And this is why it's so powerful. is that it can't be offered year-round. There is power and influence in its finiteness, the fact that it is just there for a moment. And this is just basic supply and demand. Just like the seasonal shifts in our natural world that we are biologically wired in time with, the seasonal release of pumpkin drinks is something that we look forward to because it's symbolic and novel. I would honestly love to see a parallel universe where the pumpkin spice latte is available all year round. My bet is that it would not sell nearly as well, and it would probably lack the excitement and the mystique that comes with it and its temporariness. And Starbucks has gone a step further and set up the PSL lineup of at-home beverages to be available in stores ahead of its release while supplies last. But there's a whole other layer to this, right? Because this is a huge deal for Starbucks on the whole year, because the pumpkin spice trend brings non-coffee drinkers into the store and gives returning customers an extra push to get some while they can. These temporary bursts of excitement for a limited release then often lead to returning customers after the trend is over, but the next one is hot on its heels, because let's not forget that right after pumpkin spice season, we got eggnog and peppermint lattes next for Christmas. It works in like so many different ways for the company, and a lot of others are taking note too. Since PSL has created such a huge impact on what we perceive as fall now, many other brands have followed suit with the same mnemonic device. All Starbucks did initially was pretty much take advantage of what McCormick had learned in 1934 when they released the pumpkin spice packets. They realized that if you put together the spices that make a pumpkin pie, it will remind people of pumpkin pie, and they will flock to it because it's easier than buying a pie, right? You can just drink it on your way to work. And what does a pumpkin pie mean, right? It's symbolic of family, of comfort, of optimism, and a strand of peace in a time of our lives where it just feels like there's no calm left, right? And so now, predictably, you know, we gotta overdo it, right? We have pumpkin spice donuts, pumpkin spice cookies, M&Ms, toilet paper, you know, whatever. You name it, it exists in pumpkin spice flavor. The whole pumpkin spice trend capitalizes on the same human desire to feel a connection to something bigger than ourselves, and they prey on that fear of missing out. So if you do go to Starbucks today and you enjoy a pumpkin spice latte, just know that you watched this video first, so you know you didn't do it mindlessly, I guess. And if you do get value out of our videos and you enjoy seeing them, make sure you subscribe, and you'll see another one every single week.